Police have begun firing tear gas back at them. As I said, these two groups of vehicles, this one here, are the ones that have been making rounds the town and firing tear gas canisters at the groups of protesters that are gathered to try and disperse them. But for now, it's a situation of wait and see. There are now those who are now off their vehicles, just manning the situation like everywhere else. This has been the situation all day. Bro, kizaliwa saa hii ukisikia tu So there's a group of police officers that is coming from City Hall now, coming to join the officers here on Kenyatta Avenue and towards Mwindimbingo Street. As we said, protesters are now camped on Mwindimbingo Street. There are some who are at Imenti House, and these officers that are charging from this side of City Hall are the ones charging towards the protesters who are on the other end of Mwindimbingo Street. And as police move towards them, the goal is to disperse them. So here they are, once again charging towards the protesters who are along Mwindimbingo Street. They have been there for a while now. They have lit bonfires in between of this road near City Market, and now police are charging towards them. This has been the situation all day. Whenever protesters, a large group of them gathers, police charge at them, disperse them, and then protesters move to another situation. So here are the officers shouting loudly and hitting their riot shields. Police officers have to remove the barriers that have been placed by the protesters to try and allow their vehicles through. As we said, this situation is as volatile as any, because some officers have been caught in between the protesters and the situation hasn't been good for them. Now, these are the officers charging at the protesters here on Mwindimbingo Street. And some ambulance there from the city county trying to rush someone who may have been injured for help. So here we are. We are at I&M at the moment. The protesters are now along Jamia Mosque near the Naivas here. So as you can see, there's someone that has been injured there. And of course, as I say, the situation is a bit tricky for both sides, both officers and protesters as well. So the officers have been camped here at I&M, now making their way up. There's another group of police officers on Koinange Street there, also charging at protesters down there. So it's a multi-pronged approach to try and disperse protesters. At City Market there, you can see the protesters running downwards towards Jamia Mosque as well. So we'll try and move with the contingent of officers and see what happens here. We'll try and stick with them for a moment. As I said, there seems to be someone who have been injured. We have seen several ambulances. Let's go this way. So my producer of the day, Kaimeni, is really tough on my case. The group of protesters is outside Naivas. The police officers have gone upwards along I&M. Now this group of protesters has been agitating all day. Now, this group of protesters includes Senator Kio Mutata, who was with them a while back. Now, this group is outside Naivas supermarket here along Bingo Street. Rodney. So they're shouting someone has been killed. We can't verify that, but we have seen several ambulances along this road. So there's a group of protesters outside Nation Center. Now, is this group here on Bingo Street, outside Naivas Supermarket, next to City Market. And there's a huge group of police officers on the other side on Koinange Street. Now there is an ambulance making its way from Jamia Mosque down there, where the situation has been pretty volatile all day. There's the ambulance coming for the rescue. The ambulance is making its way. Several roads have been closed as well, so the drivers have to weave through a lot to make their way and any rescue here. As we had said, there's also another group here of police officers that is attempting to rescue somebody. An ambulance is outside here as well. As we said, there were a couple of police officers, about 5 of them, who were trapped between the protesters outside JKUAT building, and stones were being hurled at them. One had to block a huge block of stone that was coming his way with his riot shield and with his hands up, trying to show protesters he has nothing wrong with them. But several other officers came to rescue there. So as we stand at the moment, there's a group of protesters here outside Naivas supermarket. There's another one outside Nation Center. Police have begun firing tear gas once again at them. The police officers made their way through Koinange Street, charging at the protesters who are now on Bingo Street. So there's another huge group down here, if my camera person Rodney can show you, outside Nation Center. If you look outside Nation Center at the moment, there's another huge group. Now this group is the one the police charged at a few minutes ago, and then the situation was very chaotic with tear gas everywhere. Now police officers reached up to the extent of Jamia Mosque there, and then the protesters moved back and towards Kenyatta Avenue. And at that point is when several officers were trapped between the protesters, and of course the protesters were throwing projectiles at them. So now that group there is just carrying leaves outside Nation Center. This other group here has lit a bonfire right at the middle of the road, and then police officers, we understand, on the other side on Koinange Street, making their way down towards the protesters.
Let's find if someone is in there. I think someone is in there. No, the pressure there. So turn it on. Yeah. City Market. It has survived. So we are at Market Lane. Let me try and find.
Someone has been injured. So I've just spoken to a colleague, Ibrahim Karanja of NTV, and he has just informed me that the police officer who was caught in between the protesters outside JKUAT building here in the CBD has just been rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital. He is injured, that we know. He has been rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital, so we can authoritatively report that one police officer has been injured and has been rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital. So this here is Hussein Khalid. So Hussein, can we just move so that we allow the police officers some space? Just quickly, you're speaking to Kenyans.co.ke. My name is Sam.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us what has happened here?
So while we were protesting, we were called, one officer had fallen down, a lady officer. So we don't know if it was a tear gas canister that hit her or if it's a stone. But we managed to control the crowd around her. We lifted her and rushed her to the nearest ambulance. At the ambulance, we were able to offer first aid services, and we made sure she's stable. After she was stable, the ambulance rushed her to the hospital. While we were also performing the first aid, another officer came with a bleeding cheek. We were also able to perform first aid, and we are saying police are not our enemies. We are here, all of us, demanding for justice for our Mashujaa. And this is why we are here today. So we are calling everyone, including the police, please stop using excessive force. Kenyans are largely peaceful. They are not even, engaging in any lawlessness. So if the police can control their actions, if the police can stop tear gassing, Kenyans will be peaceful in the streets. So please, let's maintain peace. This protest is for our fallen comrades. We don't want any more deaths, any more casualties from either side, either the protesters or the police. We don't want that.
Have you seen any protesters that have been injured from all this?
Yes, we've performed first aid on a number of protesters. They were hit by tear gas canisters, others fell down while they were running. So yes, we have casualties here and there, but at least up to this point in time, we have no any reported cases of fatalities. And we are hoping that it stays that way. We don't want any incident of anyone losing their lives from either side, either the police or the protesters. We don't need that.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. That is Hussein Khalid, the CEO of Vocal Africa, who has just informed us that at least 2 officers have been injured. As we said earlier, there's a group of protesters here. This is a group that was at City Market earlier on. So they're making their way towards Kenyatta Avenue, as we had indicated earlier. So here they are charging towards police officers. Now, where we are at right now, we are in between Koinange Street and Mwindimbingu Street. Now, there's a group of police officers on Mwindimbingu Street, a whole truckload, who have blocked the road. Now, protesters are throwing stones at police officers on Kenyatta Avenue, and police are responding in kind with tear gas as well. That was loud. So yeah, the protesters are in between Pioneer House here and of course along Koinange Street. Now these officers that have been placed at Mwindimbingu Street have also been throwing tear gas at the protesters along this road near Nation Center as well. So it's a multi-pronged approach by the police officers in an attempt to disperse all the protesters who are gathered here in the CBD at the moment. So there is a huge fume from the tear gas that has just been fired. And as I said moments earlier, we're speaking to the Vocal Africa CEO and activist Hussein Khalid, was just confirmed to us here at Kenyans.co.ke that at least 2 police officers have been injured. One seriously injured, rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital. The other one was just receiving first aid and has gone back to his contingent. So that's the update up to now. We'll try and find more action this other side on Kenyatta Avenue and bring that to you as well. So as I have said a number of times, there is a group along Nation Center agitating near Jamia Mosque. There's a group on Koinange Street, and there's a group on Mwindimbingu Street. And then there's another one at Imenti House. So we'll try and bring you these various angles of all this as it happens.
Citywide. Kenyans.co.ke.
Live ikoje? Hello, what's up? Confirm.
Yuk, bro, nakam.
Tuko katikati. Noma. One time siku zote.
Let's maintain with the other press.
No, tuko katikati.
They're not necessarily right.
So it's separate. Divert pekee.
It's happening.
Look me chill. You can cross over.
The other team is for that Japan at any point.
Let me see.
Kende hivi alafu sawa. Kende hivi kwa shuke chini. caught in between them. Oh no, they're looking down. Run! One down. Tuzunguke. Unaweza backpedal. Backpedal. Also running on this side. These guys are saying to it. Are we safer? Oh, I think we can introduce that couple. It seems to be different kinds of plastic. There are a lot of people that reporting accurate. You are like wakokoti in between. Let's end up with a group. There are people that are doing. That's what they want. Niambie kutoka mkutano. Sawa.
We've made our way up Kenyatta Avenue. Right now we are at GPO at the moment, the GPO stage next to KCB Bank, and up here is Uhuru Highway. Now, down there, as you can see, the situation is getting very chaotic. As we said, protesters had lit some bonfires down there. Now, there's a lot of confusion at the moment. Now, there's a group of protesters that is on Koinange Street and Banda Street as well, and also Loita Street. And then there's a group of protesters that are outside Imenti House down there. There's a group of protesters that are down there. And then now a large contingent of them along Mwindi Street. Now, where we are at the moment, we can see from a distance, police have fired different color of tear gas, green in nature. And at the moment, as we said, there's also another group of protesters that have been up here. There's police officers up there. These ones here have not been disturbed at all. Here is where Okio Mutata earlier in the day made his way, passed through, and then went all the way to Haile Selassie, then downwards, and then back to Kimathi Street. So we're trying to make our way downwards and see what the situation is. We make our way down and see what is happening in between. We can see a large group of protesters that are making their way up. At the moment, up here, there's a very small contingent of police officers near Uhuru Highway here at GPO. So we'll wait and see. The largest group of police officers are near Mwindi Street, and then there's an ambulance there trying to make its way up. And as I said, very many large groups of protesters. Now, where we are at earlier in the day, there are police officers stationed at Nyayo House. They're the ones who are firing tear gas at protesters who are on Kenyatta Avenue. Then there's a group of police officers who are making rounds in two police vehicles. Now, whenever those two police vehicles make their way anywhere near protesters, they are firing tear gas with disregard. Now, those officers at the moment have disappeared. We haven't seen them for a few minutes. Well, the last time we were near previous Tusky supermarket here at Kenyatta Avenue, we showed the shots of those police officers who are making their rounds with the vehicles. But at the moment, there's a group of protesters on Loita Street, there's a group of protesters on Mwindi Street, there's a group of protesters on Koinange Street at the moment. That's the situation.
Yes, you can go and show the other side. Yeah. I feel we should do that. Now, let's go.
With a tear gas canister, there's a group of motorbike guys here playing football with a tear gas canister. And that has been the situation all day. Some Kenyans have just been singing along, like the ones there. They're just but singing, nothing more. And then there are these ones here playing with a tear gas canister, a huge contingent of motorbike guys, as we said. So we're trying to go and show you the situation along Parliament. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make our way there and show you the situation as is. Now, there's another group of protesters that is making its way from up here. There's another group of protesters making their way from up here. And as I said, it's been a fluid day, a lot of action, including Okio Mutata's, whose guard has been injured and rushed to hospital. As we told you earlier, confirmed by Hussein Khalid, who was doing the first aid. One police officer has also been injured, rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital. So, as we said, here we are at Nyayo House at the moment. We are trying to see how the situation is at. A group of protesters has come from Uhuru Highway and are joining with this group here. And then you have another group that has been standing here outside GPO. And then there is another group that is down there at Imenti House. Now that group is the one that has had a lot of fracas and a lot of confrontation with police officers. So we'll wait and see where these ones are headed. But as I said, that's the situation at the moment. A large group of police officers now coming to beef up the security along this road. And there you are. There you are. Tear gas has just been fired. Tear gas has just been fired. Tear gas has just been fired. Tear gas canisters have just been fired here at Kenyatta Avenue. And police officers are trying to disperse a large group of youth that have gathered here. As I said, there's a group that is on Loiter Street, there's a group that is on Banda Street, and there's a group that is also at Mwindibingu Street. So we'll wait and see what happens. What happens for those police. Now, as I said, the protesters are throwing stones. They're trying to keep some distance to keep safe. The protesters are hurling stones at the police officers. And there's one that has braved the tear gas to just join these guys here. As I said, the situation has been a bit interesting here. There's one protester trying to make his way and agitate. Police. The groups are from anti-riot police. We'll try and see what the situation is like. As I had indicated moments earlier, there's a group of protesters that were making its way from Uhuru Highway down towards Kenyatta Avenue. And then there's a huge group of protesters that is actually on Kenyatta Avenue. And then there's another group that is on Banda Street. There's a group that is on Loiter Street. Now, if my camera person can give you a wide shot of down there, you can see the large group of protesters that are down there. Just a few scattered on the upper side, but then the largest group, the largest contingent is down there, concentrated at the Bank of India and concentrated there. We'll try to make our way back there where the action is to just give you the situation at the moment. But as I said, it seems police officers have marked this area. Whenever protesters are making attempts to get to Uhuru Highway, they're dispersed immediately. But as I say, down there, if you can see, if we have a wide angle down there, you get to see what is happening. So we're trying to make our way back and then towards the protesters again. As I said, you don't want to be caught in between the police officers and the protesters, because moments earlier we were caught in there and the tear gas and the stones were being hurled over our heads, and it's not a nice situation to be in. But as I said, We'll try and make our way down. These are APS police officers. They're Vesta reading APS. They're stationed here at Nyayo House. They're stopping protesters from making their way past the GPO of Huduma Center. And then there's a group of protesters who are on the motorbike. There's a huge contingent of protesters up here making their way from Integrity Center. There's a huge group of protesters making its way from Integrity Center. As you can see up there, a very huge group of protesters, and then police officers who are manning the roundabout are firing tear gas canisters at them. If you can see there, up there at near Nairobi Serena Hotel, there is a large group of protesters that is also making its way down. So as I said, we are right at the center of the action at the moment. So down here, protesters. Up here, protesters making their procession downwards. They don't seem to have been interfered with so far. Let's see what police do, because every time anyone has come close to this situation, they have fired tear gas canisters at them. If Rodney can show you the number of protesters that are up there. And as I said, that's the ambulance. I believe a similar ambulance that was rushing the police officer to Kenyatta National Hospital a few moments earlier. So as I say, there's a group of protesters coming from up here, as you can see. And then there is a large group of protesters down here. Now we'll try and make our way down. We'll try and make our way down and show you what is happening at the moment. We'll try. This situation here. So we want to go downwards and show you the situation there. But as I've indicated, community there are lots of protesters making their way down towards Kenyatta Avenue. We'll see whether they are stopped. But as that is happening, down here, fumes are everywhere. Police are firing tear gas canisters every few seconds. At Imenti, the situation is simply chaotic. Now, what is problematic about that group is that there are several roads that can lead you to State House where they are at. And there are a lot of police officers stationed around this place. You understand State House Road has been barricaded, so no one is making their way there. And they are on the lane that takes you down from Community Center through Kenyatta Avenue towards the CBD. So let's walk our way to the CBD and show you the situation there. Water cannons. These water cannons were positioned outside the Supreme Court, and now they are washing out the protesters that are outside Bank of India on Kenyatta Avenue. As I say, that has been the action point all day. Now, these protesters are the same group that was dispersed earlier. They are now back on Kenyatta Avenue. This group went to Loita Street, some of them went to Mwindimbingu Street, and now all of them have congregated outside Bank of India. And as you can see from a distance, police are now launching their water cannon at them. So we'll get there in just a moment, but there's still a group of protesters making their way down through Koinange Street and through Loita Street to try and get back to the protesters who are also down here. As I said, there are several number of groups. They're not all united, they're not all the same, so there are several number of groups of protesters right in between the capital city at the moment. Now the water cannon is retreating at the moment. We'll try and get there in just time to show you that. Here you are. The large group of protesters are here. As I said, police officers are stationed there. There you are. Police have begun firing tear gas at them. Now the protesters are here. They're making their way towards the Parliament, towards the road that leads you towards Parliament Road here on Cardinal Otunga Street. We'll wait and see whether they're allowed to pass. But as I said, there's a huge contingent of police officers here. There's a large group of protesters here. There's another group of protesters down there. You don't want to be caught in between. And now they're making their way up. They're making their way up. We'll wait and see where they go to. But they're making their way up. Some of them are making their way up, others are making their way towards Cardinal Otunga Street. We'll wait and see. But then there's another group that is down there, right at the Bank of India, where the water cannons are. So it's several groups of protesters, all doing different things at the moment. So we'll give you an update as we get it right now. So this group of protesters, including Boda Boda guys, are trying to make their way towards Cardinal Otunga Street. We know that's a no-go zone for police officers here at Nyayo House. And of course, the police officers haven't fired at them. Moments ago, they fired tear gas canisters towards them. Now, this group that is making its way towards Cardinal Otunga is part of the group that was making its way from Community Center. They've used the route behind the KCB Bank here, Pioneer House, that's Loiter Street, and now on Koinange Street, and trying to make their way to Banda Street. If you remember last year, once they breached the Cardinal Otunga Street, they were right at the face of Parliament. So where we are at the moment, it looks very tricky for police officers. Now, down there, protesters are also charging at the officers near the Supreme Court as well. So it's a situation where both groups of protesters, police officers haven't moved in yet. That huge truck that we showed you, that huge truck of police that we showed you has just retreated towards Nyayo House. So as I said, we are trying to show you both the action and stay safe. The officers are stationed there and there, but they're not attacking yet. Now here is a group of protesters here. And if my cameraman Rodney can just show you a wide view angle up there and show you the number of protesters down there as well, you can see that group down there as well. So it's two different groups of protesters. And as I said, they're trying to get closer. Now there's another group of protesters that is making their way from up here. And this is the group that I was saying that was behind Loiter Street, joining these protesters that are on trying to get to Cardinal Otunga Street. So at the moment, thousands are at Kenyatta Avenue. Thousands of protesters have congregated at Kenyatta Avenue. The ones here at GPO, there is no tear gas canisters fired at them yet, but the ones that are down there, police have fired tear gas at them several times. Police have fired tear gas canisters at them several times. So we'll wait and see what happens at the moment. So we're trying to make our way down to give you all the action. We'll try and make our way down and give you the full action. As I said, the large group of protesters here, have been making their way. This is a group that was chased by police officers moments earlier, and as I said, it's in their thousands. It's in their thousands, if you can see. The CBD. For protesters just protesting and making their way up.
Camera, sorry.
Their way up. This is a group that has Okio Mutata with them. This is a group that has had Okio Mutata with them all day. This is a group that has had Okio Mutata, and they're making their way up. Again, as I said, whenever protesters are getting anywhere near the GPO center, police are firing tear gas at them. So the situation is hide and seek at the moment. Okio Mutata is with this group here that is attempting to go towards Uhuru Highway at GPO here. Let's see whether he makes it. He has been making rounds the city all day long, Okio Mutata, the senator from Busia County. Now, the whole group that was down there at Imenti has also made its way up. The whole group has made their way up, and they're now moving towards Uhuru Highway. As I said, a huge contingent of police officers have been stationed at Nyayo House and have been firing tear gas at will at protesters. One tear gas canister has been fired back, and as I said, police have begun firing tear gas once again whenever protesters reach this area. Woo! And police have begun once again firing tear gas canisters.
It's a very interesting get-together. They've got a group of protesters that are making their way down.
We are now here. This is a point where, by the way, interestingly, all distances in Kenya are measured from here. And that's why we are behind. This is right behind GPO on Cardinal Otunga Street. Tear gas has been fired at us from Kenyatta Avenue by the officers stationed at Nyayo House. You can hear everyone is coughing right now. The tear gas is really stinging. We have tried to move to a different location. Whoa!
Chile maji. Kuna maji, zaidi maji. Hello. Hey. What's that? Hey. Where are you? Fika tuongea.
We must be seen. Leo umenipata. Umenipata. Shika wameruka ndani. Yeye amekam off guard. Hiyo. Napiga tu.
Thank you.
Sasa kwa nini hatuka like wacha bwana. Wacha.
Oh shit. Mpaka mtu sana washwe hivi msho.
Nilikwambia jana, I told you, miwani ninapata stress. Kana kwa mama. Hivi ndio fingers kale. So mara cross his fingers which has been dropped. Has been dropped. Hata tena video wajipata. Umejiosha iko? Inapomola. Kiasi. Mimi kwanza ndio kufunga kana. Sikibia tulifilia kunini? Kuosha.
Tumalize basi safari moja bwana. Safari moja tu. Sio mreledi ya kazi Iran.
Tulikuwa tumekula na pia gas fulani.
Aende huyu Ruto.
Tulikuwa tumeshika hapa. Acha ndakupigia. Acha ndakupigia Mama. there appears to be a bunch of people who are coming in and trying to destroy some of the lights, as you can see. The protests seem to be stuck and held within Kenyatta Avenue. And we are not sure whether they want to move towards the State House or they want to go back to the Parliament. But we will keep you posted with every news update and keep it tuned at Kenyans.co.ke.
Majamaa, kwani mmechoka? Konja. Twendeni lunch. Lunch kwa pale buffet. Buffet ready. Pale ni nini? Masani ya lunch. Pale wewe. One down. One down.
So we're trying to make our way. As we have said, and I've shown you all day, this is a group of protesters that were making their way from Imenti House. They're here at the intersection of Koinange Street and Kenyatta Avenue. They're making their way up towards GPO. Police have been firing tear gas every time the protesters get close to Nyayo House, and the group is insisting on moving towards the police officers and the tear gas and soldiering on towards the wards Uhuru Highway and that side. We do know Kio Mutata made it through. We don't know whether the rest will be able to make it through. And as I said, it's been a serious group. And of course, there's a group here following Larry Mador there, who's trying to also make his way up towards the Uhuru Highway Avenue. And there you are, the sounds of tear gas canisters continuing being fired here. Now, we want to show you the situation in the whole of the capital. As we said, this is the action center, Kenyatta Avenue. This has been the action center. Now we want to show you the other sides of the capital and the things that have happened already. So of course, as we have said, this is a group of the protesters who are making their way through Mwindi Bingu Street, and we're going to try to show you everything that has been happening. So here they are. Earlier on, the police engaged them, but then left. Of course, they left and of course now are joining them. They have all fallen back towards Nyayo House, and where they're now setting up their barricade there at the moment. So we want to show you the situation down here as well, because a huge group of police officers are making their round there. As we said, there are another group of protesters there making their voices heard. Now, here's a group of protesters on Koinange Street. This is a group that has been very vocal. They're the group that have all stood their ground against the police officers. We're advancing at them. Now, there's another fireball that has been just lit there. So we're going towards downtown. As we said, one protester is just sleeping on the road there. We hope he is okay. And there's another large group, a bonfire on Koinange Street. A bonfire has just been lit on Kenyatta Avenue. And as I said, police officers are in between the protesters at the Bank of India right now. Police on their horses. They're trying to again disperse the protesters, which they have done all day. So we're going to try and get ahead there because this side, of course, as I told you, police officers at Nyayo House, protesters this way. And we'll try and walk towards the end, of course, to show you. There are the police officers on their horses trying to disperse the protesters who are at around Imenti House. And up here, as I've told you, a large group of protesters gathered at GPO. Now, police have started pushing them back as well. Police have started pushing them back towards the other protesters who are down here as well. So, as I said, a couple of police officers were caught in between the protesters. One has been rushed to Kenyatta National Hospital, that we know so far. Now, there is the barricade the police are forming. A wall of men they are forming with their horses, and police officers on their foot patrol as they are trying to stop the protesters that are down there from making their way up here. And as I said, the protesters that are up there as well have made their way, are trying to make their way down as well. They've started walking backwards as well, as police have repelled them. There's a number of police officers that are stationed at the roundabout. The group that was coming from community has also arrived at the roundabout, as I said earlier. So let us show you the situation right at the heart of the CBD here. There is the wall of police officers, the group of police officers that have now, in essence, made that the protesters that are at GPO right now are in between two groups of police officers. Those officers down there and these officers that are stationed at Nyayo House at the moment. So we are live. We are bringing you this action live. There's a group of protesters along Koinange Street. There's a group of protesters on Windimbingu Street. There's a group of a huge contingent of police officers that are stationed right there outside Bank of India as they try and find a way of stopping the protesters that are also down there from making their way up. Now, if my camera person Rodney can show you the picture down there, you can see there's a bonfire outside City Hall. There's a bonfire outside City Hall that had been lit by protesters who made their way through that road. And as I said, this has been an action point all day. Protesters along this street, Windimbingu Street, a bonfire there, a bonfire near City Market. They've been agitating all day. Now, these protesters who have been here had been pushed earlier by police towards Nation Center. They came back, made their way to Kenyatta Avenue, connected with the protesters that were down there. At the moment, the largest contingent of protesters is outside GPO Center. And then there are another group that is agitating down there. And you can hear police are firing at them. They're firing tear gas canisters at them to try and separate them. We'll try and find some shelter. Police are firing in the sky to try and disperse protesters. As I said, City Hall has been a target today. As you can see, city askaris are standing guard. To try and protect the area because protesters had arrived there and they had already, of course, removed some. As you can hear, police helicopter is in the sky as well, manning the air as well to try and disperse protesters. We're going to try and make our way towards the police officers who are down here. Hopefully they don't shoot us because they've been firing live ammunition in the sky as well. So as I said, that large group of protesters that is down there, So as I said, this group is here, then police officers are down here. This is where water cannons were being fired at protesters on this street. Now the protesters have made their way up, and as I said, there's still some action down here. We have shown you what is happening up there. We want to show you what is happening down here. We're going to have to wear our masks at this area because tear gas is stinging at this area. As you can hear, police are still firing at protesters down here. And that has been the situation all day. There you go. The sounds of police firing at protesters. Again, police have begun firing at protesters up here as well, along Kenyatta Avenue near GPO. And the protesting group that is Jamia at Jamia Mosque, police have also fired at them. Now, these are several groups of protesters. There are some that are hiding behind trees here and throwing objects at the police officers as well. And as I said, this is the situation along. There are the police officers trying to charge at the protesters at the moment. These protesters are along that street that connects you to, of course, I&M Bank. And as I said, police have fired a lot of water cannons here. So if you have an idea of where we are at right now, to just paint a picture, this is this is the building, the Uganda House. This is Uganda House. Police officers have now begun charging at protesters. We're going to just leave them to do their job. They are pushing towards the protesters who are throwing stones back at them, and they're firing tear gas canisters at them. So the sounds of the CBD, it feels like a bombardment. A large number of police officers now. They're caught in between the two groups of protesters. The ones up there, the ones down here, and the ones here have their horses as well. There's another group of police that is next to Sarova Stanley Hotel that are firing at protesters along Imenti House. And then there's this group of police now that is in between the two that is firing towards the protesters along Kenyatta Avenue at GPO, the largest group of protesters yet. So this is the aftermath of that water cannon. that was unleashed. And police have begun firing tear gas at them in a bid to disperse them. And now this is the aftermath. So this water cannon is the one that we've shown you earlier, was stationed down there at the gates of the Supreme Court. The water cannon here is the one that was stationed at the Supreme Court. And then even the horses are reacting to the gunshots, the rapid gunshots that are being heard here at the moment. Those are tear gas canisters being fired at protesters, as I said. So these officers here are tasked with stopping the protesters down there from making their way up. And then the officers in between here who are retreating right now, these officers are retreating back. A huge group of protesters has been stationed at GPO all day, and they're the ones that are pushing back these officers who we shared with you earlier. We're trying to charge at them. So Avenue, as we had showed you earlier, there was a different group of protesters that were trying to make their way around Moi Avenue and mostly at Archives. Then there's a group of protesters that were trying to access the Cardinal Otunga Street. They were pushed back. Now, at the moment where we are at, this is Standard Street, and then that connects you to, of course, Kimathi Street, of course, and also this is the road where a number of protesters were trying to make their way towards the Supreme Court. They were pushed back on Wabera Street. They were pushed back. Still, a huge contingent of police officers here, and the officers that were there have started pushing upwards towards the protesters that are on Kenyatta Avenue. So we want to show you the action from down there. We've shown you the action from up there. We want to show you the situation in and around this area. As you can hear, a lot of tear gas canisters are being fired at the protesters. Now, a huge contingent of police officers also on this road. What these police officers are doing is to ensure that the Supreme Court remains a place that is persona non gratas are not allowed. If you're not a member of the press, you're not allowed to pass through this street. The water cannon vehicle is still stationed there. Another one is also stationed down there. that is ready to also repel any protesters. Police on their horses are also here, and they're still firing tear gas canisters at the protesters that I had told you earlier. So let's try and make our way back and show you the other side of the street, just slowly. As I said, the group of protesters that were up there have been repelled. And as I had told you earlier on, police officers at Nyayo House are doing the job of preventing anyone from joining the Parliament Way, and of course retaining the protesters along Kenyatta Avenue all day long. Now, the only person that made his way through was Senator Okiya Mutata, and a very small contingent of protesters that made their way all the way to Uhuru Highway, then downwards towards Parliament, went to Haile Selassie Avenue, then down all the way to Moi Avenue, and after that, they went through to Kimathi Street. We caught up with Senator Okiya Mutata when he was saying that one of his group members was injured and rushed to hospital. Senator Okiya Mutata once again charged through the Kenyatta Avenue, was allowed to pass, and went through again to Uhuru Highway. We're trying to catch up with him again, try and find him down here as well. So, huge number of police officers outside the Supreme Court, as we had indicated to you. We want to use these back streets to go and show you the angle from the other side of the protesters as well. So, as I said, police are stopping anyone from just making their way up. So, this is the situation outside City Hall. So outside there, as you can see, outside there was a fire that was lit near City Hall. Police officers have been sent there to beef up security. Protesters made their way here, but they couldn't make their way past the officers who were stationed here. Now, the officers there repelled them back towards Kenyatta Avenue, as they have done all day long. So, of course, City Hall here, it's regarded as the key installation. This is where the County Assembly of Nairobi is. This is where the office of the governor is on the other side. So, as I said, now police officers and protesters are challenging each other on this side. We want to give you a shot from the other side of the situation from the other end. Police officers seem to be having a fracas there with some protesters. And then the situation from this side, you can see a number of protesters that are making their way down there. So we want to use this street to show you the point of view from the other end as well. So we're going to go down. We want to show you the view from the protesters' angle at Imenti House. As I said, no action here. A lot of police officers, the officers that are busy, are up this street, Wabera Street, and trying to stop any protester from making their way up here. So we're trying to show you things on Moi Avenue, because we've shown you Kenyatta Avenue pretty much all day. We want to show you how things are at Moi Avenue, which is a hotspot for protests. Of course, the protesters that were here earlier, some of them divided themselves and moved upwards towards Kenyatta Avenue. That group has been held up at Kenyatta Avenue. And then you have got a group of police officers that is separating the two groups. The ones that are down here at Imenti House and the one that is up at GPO. Some officers are stopping them. They're standing there at Bank of India to ensure that these two groups do not meet. Some few businesses are open, like Java there is open, which takes a lot of courage for the business to be open on a day like this. Yeah, so we are right now making our way towards Dedan Kimathi commemoration area here along International House. Very little action on this street, but as I can tell you, protesters around Archives have been making their way. Very few police officers on this street as well. Very few, if any. Very few, if any. But now, as I said, we're trying to move around and move quickly to show you the view around town. And of course, I'll show you where the action points are. I've shown you the situation right now at GPO, which is very, very tricky right now. We want to show you the situation now at the other side, at Sarovo Stanley, where another group of protesters have been engaging police for a better part of last hour. It's about 1:03 p.m. right now, around 1:05, and some protesters up there were saying it's lunchtime, meaning they want to go for the tear gas, they want to go challenge the police officers and try and see if they can make their way to Uhuru Highway. If they make their way to Uhuru Highway, their target is the National Assembly. The target is the National Assembly. So we're trying to make our way down here, and we're meeting some protesters there, trying to shout at us. Of course, this has been an action point all day. As you can hear the sounds, even before I say anything, it sounds like a war zone. A lot of bombardment, a lot of loud noises of tear gas canisters blasting the air. So We have made our way. Here we are. We are at Sarova Stanley, near Sarova Stanley, next to Dan Kimathi, an area that has been an action point, a flaction point all day. So we'll try and go there safely if we can. We'll try and make our way safely if we can. We'll try and make our way safely if we can. No police officers firing anything, but a motorcycle on the streets making that loud sound. So we are making our way next to Kaunda Street, where there are several youth. Making their way up. So we had earlier shown you the Flackers point at this point when it was really very chaotic, a very chaotic scene earlier here. So we're trying to make our way back here again and show you the situation. Of course, around 10 a.m. things weren't this hot, but things are getting a bit hot. Tension is high. Police officers have been firing consistently, as you can hear. So we are at Sarova Stanley at the moment, and you can hear the tear gas canisters from up there. The officers are firing at the protesters down there. Let's show you in just a moment. There is another tear gas canister fired. There is another tear gas canister that has just been fired at the protesters here. As I say, there's another group of protesters that have made their way up there. So, as I've said, protesters are making their way back, retreating. Nation Center. That's a place that has been an action point all day. We understand police officers are on Moi Avenue firing at protesters that are along Kenyatta Avenue and stationed at Nation Center right now. So we have shown you the situation up there. Down here is also the same thing. And there you hear police officers firing at protesters who are stationed right now. If my camera person is showing you the view at Nation Center, it's running battles between police officers and protesters. There is police officer firing.
Why are the police coming stones? Wacha kurusha mawe hoya. Wacha kurusha mawe. We are peaceful. We are peaceful. Come. We are peaceful.
And protesters were being based at Kenyatta Avenue and as well as
Stop killing us! Nyinyi basi mwingie ndani ndio msionekane nje.
Is just now splitting up. The police have just fired a tear gas canister towards protesters that are now gathering at Hilton Hotel here at the center of the CBD. These protesters are now gathering down there. Remember, up there, straight towards there, they can meet this, as we showed you, the Supreme Court, and that is an area where police officers have been stationed. And as I said, the stinking smell of tear gas is in the air. Everybody is sneezing right now. Now, there's a group of protesters outside Nation Media Group. That group of protesters has not joined the one that is up on Kenyatta Avenue, right? Has not joined the protesters that are at Kenyatta Avenue. So the police are proceeding slowly. You can move closer to the guys of Hilton, of Sarova. You can move close to the guys of Sarova.
Stations are full.
So as I had told you earlier, there's a group of protesters that is outside Nation Center. Right now where we are at the entrance of Sarova Stanley. You can see this group of police officers here who are coming, who made their way down from Moi Avenue, trying to stop those protesters from coming this way. And then there's another group of protesters that is up there as well, that are split from this group that is here at Nation Center. That group is at GPO. A group of police officers have stood in between the two as well. So the police are trying to maintain this separate groups where they are at the moment. So what we understand is the idea is to make sure that not all of them do not congregate at once in one place. So as things are, a group of protesters is next to Bank of India, a group of protesters is next to Nation Media Group at Nation Center, another group is at GPOs that had just fired tear gas cannons at them, trying to disperse them as well. So this contingent of officers here near Imenti House has been doing the job here to try and keep the protesters there as far as your eye can see, trying and keeping them there next to Jamia Mosque there, past Nation Media Group, just slightly past Nation Center, keeping them there. Then there's another group at the Bank of India. Now these two groups have been using the streets behind there, Loiter Street mainly, as well as to try and make sure that they help keep the running battle between them and the police. Earlier we showed you police officers trying to separate the two groups as well, trying to make sure that that street is empty, but that didn't work. They have just been pushed back towards Kenyatta Avenue, and as I said, the flaction point right now, Nation Media Group, GPO Center, and the Bank of India. We have shown you officers who are on Wabera Street trying to keep the protesters that are along that street towards Bank of India, where they are at right now, but they are still pouring right at Kenyatta Avenue. Down here, Imenti House, things are quiet and calm, collected, but the police officers are here. A huge contingent of them are right here. And they're keeping protesters right there as far as your eye can see where they're at. And then there's this group here, right at the center on Wabera Street. That group there is what is becoming a very big problem for police officers as they try to push them back, and then they don't want them to go towards that side because they can make their way up towards the National Assembly and the Parliament buildings as well. So police want the protesters to stay here along Kenyatta Avenue and backwards there towards Jamia Mosque. These officers who have just fired a tear gas at the protesters who were on Kimathi Street and those ones at Nation Center have started retreating downwards towards Moi Avenue right now. And as I said, every time protesters are gathering in huge numbers, police are firing tear gas canisters at them. They do not want protesters in large groups. Right now, if my camera person Rodney can show you, a large group of border riders have just stationed themselves next to the building here, trying to take shelter and show the police officers they're not part of the protest as well. So it's trying to make sure that if you are not protesting, you are not standing in the way of police officers, and if you are, you're with the protesters as well. So that's the distinction at the moment here in the CBD. As I said, protesters on that side have been running battles with police officers all day. We'll try and make our way upwards to along Kenyatta Avenue. But as I've said, large contingent of officers at Imenti House, next to Naivas, large contingent of police officers trying to keep this group of protesters at Nation Center where they are at. And then there's a group of police officers on Wabera Street trying to keep the protesters from making their procession towards the Supreme Court. And then there's another group of police officers stationed at Nyayo House, keeping those protesters from making their way along Uhuru Highway.
That one is
So, and the fund is a group down here that is wearing box. There's a group at Koga. This is wearing box. Where do you don't want to go? I don't want to go. Yeah, no. That's like this. So, you can
Yes.
As I said earlier, we are stationed at Sarova Stanley right now. Next to us is Imenti House. A large group of police officers here at Kenyatta Avenue. Just recapping for you. Large number of protesters there. That is near Nation Center at Jamia Mosque. We understand there's a large group that is also at Koja right now. There's another group that is next to Hilton Hotel. And then there's another group that is... There's also another group that is at Bank of India as well. There's a group at Bank of India. There's another group at GPO. But also, we have just received news that the Communications Authority of Kenya has just ordered all TV and radio stations to stop live coverage of the protests. This is also something that we have just received. So, as we speak right now, media houses have been ordered to stop broadcasting the protests as things are happening right now. So we'll wait and see what goes on right now. As I said, we have a group of protesters there, a group of protesters that is at the Bank of India, and also another group of protesters that is at Koja right now. There are police officers who are firing at the protesters that are down there. We'll try and move away to give the police officers the opportunity to do their job. But as I said, there's another group of protesters that is coming from Kimathi Street, making their way up towards the protesters that are here at this intersection. At this intersection, there is a tear gas canister that has just been returned at the police officers. We can still hear the sounds of helicopters that are making round within the capital as well. There is a tear gas canister so close to us. We're stationed here at Sarova Stanley right now. You push back. Police are firing canisters at the protesters who are now trying to charge at them. The ones that are from Nation Center here at the intersection between Nation Center and Kenyatta Avenue. As I said, another tear gas canister has just been thrown. That's the third one I've counted so far. That's the third one I've counted. And there is practically no protesters at the middle of the road right now. So you wonder why the police officers are throwing the tear gas. But as I said, the officers down here, their job mainly is to stop protesters from joining Kenyatta Avenue, which has been a point of congregation for all protesters all day. Now the protesters are at Nation Center. You can see the police are firing tear gas canisters at them. The ones at Nation Center. The ones at Wabera Street are still firing at the protesters who are at Wabera Street as well. There is a protester who is right at the middle of the smoke there, hitting back a canister towards the police officers there. And as I said, it's been running battles all day. Running battles between police officers and protesters all day. So these officers stationed here, some of them are from, of course, prison service, and most of them are stationed within the capital as well. Now, the group of officers that was stationed at Nyayo House, as we told you earlier, were officers that, of course, so like the group that was stationed up there at Nyayo House is the group that we're trying to make our way upwards as another tear gas canister is fired at the protesters. So as I said, we are trying to be very cautious. There are a group of protesters there firing, throwing a stone towards the police officers. And safety is key for us at the moment. As I said, police officers are firing bullets in the air as well. Slowly, Rodney. So as I said, you can see there, a group of protesters there at Bank of India. This group of protesters are engaging police officers along Wabera Street. And then the police officers down here at Imenti are the ones that are trying to stop the protesters at Nation Center and Koja from making their way towards Moi Avenue. Now, the police officers that are stationed here outside Naivas have started trying to make their way towards Moi Avenue. We don't know whether there's a new flaction point there. We'll try and get that for you. But as we try and move upwards to try and see the situation on Wabera Street, we're moving slowly. Of course, not throwing caution to the wind, but we want to keep you as updated as we can. So, rioters have run rampage on anything green on the city. You can see the road here. Stones have been put there. Stones have been thrown on the road everywhere. And as I said, we are trying to keep cautious, but also give you the situation in the capital as is. Oh my God. The tear gas is really stinging. It's in the air, a lot of it. But we'll give you the updates as we get them. So this street here, Wabera Street, has been a point of collection for police officers. Protesters are here, gathered here. Some of them are up there at, of course, GPO. So we're trying to see if we can get there cautiously. we'll try and see our strategy. But as I said, there are officers stationed next to Imenti House, keeping safety there, stopping the protesters that are on Nation Center and Koinange Avenue from trying to make their way Kimathi Street from making their way to Kenyatta Avenue. And then there's a group of protesters that are here at Jamia Mosque, next to the Bank of India, who are trying to make their way towards here. And then you have two groups of police officers that are firing from two different sides. You have police officers that are firing at Jamia Mosque, you have police officers that are firing from Wabera Street, and you have police officers that are firing from this side, lower Kenyatta Avenue, next to Naivas Supermarket. So let's try and make our way up. Let's try and make our way up. The group of police officers that we showed you earlier along this street that were just right where we are standing right now have retreated next to the Supreme Court along Wabera Street. And right now, they're trying to keep the protesters who have just been marching slowly from making any more gains towards the Supreme Court. They have made a barrier of men there, trying to stop all protesters from there. And as I said, protesters that are down here who are on Kimathi Street are trying to make their way also on Kenyatta Avenue. And then a very huge contingent of protesters along near I&M have also been making their way towards Kenyatta Avenue as well. So the situation as we speak, several protesters are they're throwing stones at the police officers at the moment. The officers right at the corner there trying to run away for their lives as the protesters hurl stones at them at the moment. So the situation is like this, as we can show you right now. Our point of view is behind the protesters along Wabera Street, and there is a tear gas canister. Police officers are on the other side. There is a protester there lying down on the street trying to point at the police officers. I don't know what he's pointing at police officers there. Oh, there's a tear gas canister that just narrowly missed him. But I say police officers are firing at the protesters. That was loud. At protesters there. There is a guy once again. He's sleeping on a thing, holding something, pretending to be a gun there. That's very risky. That's very risky. That's very risky. And as I tell you that, protesters are making another charge towards the officers there. And as I said, we're trying to make sure we are aware of what police officers are doing and not risking ourselves here. Now the contingent of police officers are opening themselves up for that vehicle that we told you that is making rounds in the city. And whenever that car comes, they're just shooting tear gas canisters at protesters with disregard. Any moment they start making their rounds at the protesters. So whenever tear gas canister goes off, by the way, I hope you can see on your shot, there are some repellents that are kind of dispersed. So you have to be careful about those projectiles because they can easily hit you. As I said, several ambulances you have monitored today making their way, making rescues of several protesters. And protesters are not even touching the ambulances. They're not interfering with them. And as I said, Wabera Street is interesting. There is a protester we were saying holding a stick. There is a protester we were telling you about holding a stick. There is one of the projectiles that were thrown at the protester here. He's showing it to us here. It looks almost like a bullet though. Not sure what it is, but it was fired towards the protesters. It's hot. It's hot. It's one of the part of the canisters that have been fired by police officers today. This is what we are getting from the street from one of the protesters who have been gathering this for us, as well as you can see everything that the police have been collecting in the streets right now. This is part of what has been collected. This is a cartridge that is collected by the protesters as well. So that's pretty hot. That has just been fired by the protesters. Now there's another group of protesters that is making their way up from down there. The group that was at Nation Center is making its way up here. As you can see, these are some of the things that we have seen from protesters. So our producer is pretty safety cautious there. He's the one you had there. We'll try and seek shelter here. And try and give you the shot as well. We're taking shelter at Sanlam to try and give you the shot as well, but equally stay safe. Give me that cartridge as well. This is one of the shells from the cartridges you have seen, and the water cannon is now firing here in the city. This is one of the cartridges we have gotten from the protesters as well. So the water cannon has begun firing at protesters again. So we are hiding ourselves here to try and keep ourselves safe, but also bring you the shots as we can get them. If Rodney can push back here to show you what is happening on Kenyatta Avenue as well, to give you a wider angle of what is happening on Kenyatta Avenue. A lot of protesters there. And I can also confirm to you, we have received photos and videos. There is a water cannon. That is very vicious. It's firing towards the protesters who are at the Bank of India. And that stings. That water stings as well. So this is a group of protesters that was at the Nini. There it is, making its way, and then a police officer firing a tear gas cannon as well, a canister as well at the protesters. And both cars have come out. These are the vehicles we had showed you moments earlier. Both of them have come out. Both vehicles have come out to fire at protesters. Be careful, Rodney. Be careful. They're firing this side. So these are the police vehicles we had shown you earlier, trying to repel protesters as well. Trying to push back the protesters that are on Wabera Street, next to Macmillan Library, next to JKUAT as well. These are the guys that are being pushed back. The water cannons are out. As I said, we were trying to find the best angle, and in the process, we found the best view as well. So for the two. So as I said, there's a group of protesters at I&M, next to I&M. There's a group of protesters that were making their way from Nation Center, and this group has been halted. The water cannons are out. They're trying to fire at protesters that are on that side, hurling stones at the police officers. So it's been a pretty scary day for both. And there it is, once again, the water cannon firing at the protesters who are on Wabera Street. It's firing at everyone, of protesters that are on Wabera Street. Some of them are trying to dodge the whole shooting as well. So, as I said, it's been a pretty difficult day for both police and protesters as well. Police have been firing tear gas canisters at the protesters, but now the protesters have come. They're just next here, right here at JKUAT Towers. These protesters are the ones that were on Mwindi Mbingu Street. The water cannons are being fired at them to try and repel them, to push them back, towards that I&M Bank area. And then there's this group of protesters here that are between on Wabera Street. There are the police officers firing tear gas canisters at them, as we said. Those are the vehicles we were telling you about. The vehicles that are making round between the CBD, and the tear gas canister has been fired back at the police officers. There, he's right in front of the vehicle, the water cannon here, and he's just throwing stones right in front of it. There is another one. A very huge rock has been thrown at the police officer's vehicle here. And as I said, it's a very huge flaction point at the moment, and the situation looks very bad. It looks very bad for both protesters. The water cannons are retreating now. Our police has just fired a tear gas canister to try and control the crowd that is just hurling stones back at the police officers. As I said, we are in a safe location at the moment. We don't know how safe this will be in the next few minutes, because a huge crowd is making its way down. As you can see, a very huge crowd of protesters is making its way down, running towards Wabera Street and Jamia Mosque. And then police officers are here. They have now begun making their way towards the protesters and pushing them back. Goodness me. One water cannon has been caught near protesters. One motorcycle guy has been hit, and the protester is just right in front of the car there. Another water cannon is being pushed right there at JKUAT area, trying to push back the protesters. He's firing even at the police officers. Then there's that group of protesters up there as well, whom the police are trying to control as well. So there's that group up there at Kenyatta Avenue, near I&M Bank. There's a group next to Bank of India. And then the group that was down here has made its way back up through Nation Center, that is now staring at officers near Wabera Street right now. So where we are at, we have an eye bird's view of the situation at the moment. Officers at I&M, protesters at I&M, water cannon along that road as well, trying to fire the protesters. A huge battalion of officers here trying to control the group from going downwards, and they're being repelled upwards as well. And the protesters are hurling stones at the police officers as well. There is a water cannon again being unleashed at the protesters. The other two have retreated. The other two water cannons have retreated back. They're not firing at the protesters. A huge group of them is gathered right there next to I&M Bank. I hope our shot is giving you a good view of that as well. So you can clearly see the two groups of police officers here, a huge contingent of them, and then the large group of protesters that are right there at the JKUAT Towers at the moment, and they are trying to push themselves downwards towards Imenti House. As we had already told you, there's another group of police officers at Imenti House who are trying to push back the protesters as well. So the two groups might end up meeting at some point. We'll wait and see. There you go. They are shouting, "We are many." The protesters are shouting, "We are many." The protesters are shouting, "We are many." We're keeping ourselves safe, just to give you the shot, but also stay safe. Police are hurling tear gas at them, but the protesters are shouting, "We are many, we are many, we are many."
We're hiding ourselves because the situation has gotten a bit tense at the moment. We're firing a lot of tear gas right now.
Turn off the mic.